My name is Charlotte Fenwick, and I was 28 when I finally bought the beach house I had spent nearly a decade working toward. I had left my corporate job 3 weeks earlier, signed the closing papers that afternoon, and barely carried the first box through the front door when my mother called. She did not congratulate me. She announced that she and my father had sold their house and would be moving into mine the next morning. I thought I had misunderstood until she laughed. "Your father says we should take the upstairs suite. You can use one of the smaller rooms." I reminded her that I had bought the property with my own savings and had never invited anyone to live with me. Her voice hardened. "We're your family, Charlotte. Find somewhere else if it bothers you." Then my brother spoke in the background. "Tell her the movers will arrive before noon." I did not argue. I stared at the unopened boxes around me and smiled because, for the first time, their entitlement did not frighten me. It gave me clarity. "Drive safely," I said and ended the call. By 6 the next morning, everything was ready. At 11:47 a.m., my phone began vibrating. By noon, I had 34 missed calls. They had reached my beach house, tried to begin their new life, and discovered the welcome surprise waiting at the front door. Before I explain why my mother called 34 times, and what happened when I finally faced her, tell me what time it is where you are, where you're watching from, and what the weather is like there. Does it match your mood today? I'm curious to see how far this story travels. The part my mother never understood was that the beach house had not appeared in my life because I was lucky. I started saving for it at 19 after spending a summer working at a restaurant near the Jersey Shore. I would close after midnight, walk past rows of houses facing the water, and promise myself that one day I would own a place no one could take from me. At the time, I lived with my parents, attended community college, and worked evenings because helping my brother was considered a greater priority than helping me. His private tuition was called an investment. Mine was something I could manage if I were responsible. So I took morning classes, worked nights, completed assignments in my car, and later transferred while keeping 2 jobs. When my mother gave me $12,800, I repaid every dollar within 26 months. I kept the records because she often rewrote history when she wanted something. After graduation, I moved into a leaking studio, took a job in financial operations, accepted overtime, and deposited every bonus into an account labeled Ocean. My friends traveled. I declined. My coworkers replaced their cars. I kept mine. A relationship ended because my former partner said I treated the future like an emergency that had to be funded. He was not entirely wrong. I had watched my mother use money as control. Every gift carried a future obligation. I wanted one place that belonged entirely to me. My father, Douglas, rarely challenged her. He was not openly cruel, but silence can become its own kind of participation. If she volunteered my time, he said she meant well. If she promised my savings to help my brother, he suggested I avoid an argument. My brother, Zachary, learned the system quickly. If he presented his wants as family needs, our mother defended him. When he wanted money for an apartment, she called it a fresh start. When I needed money for a professional certification, she said adulthood required sacrifice. When his first business failed, she said entrepreneurs deserved second chances. When I worked through exhaustion, she said I had always been independent. That independence eventually paid for the house. It was not enormous or glamorous. It had 3 bedrooms, a narrow kitchen, a detached garage, and an upstairs room with windows facing the water. I put down 32%, secured a manageable mortgage, and kept enough savings for repairs. 3 weeks before closing, I resigned from my corporate position after negotiating a consulting contract that allowed me to work remotely. My life finally felt like it belonged to me. My mother knew the closing date. What I did not know until that night was that she had been planning around my property for weeks. After our call, I opened the family group chat and searched my name. She had written, Charlotte's new place will give us room to breathe after the sale. She had shared pictures from the listing and referred to the upstairs room as our suite. An aunt asked whether I was comfortable with the arrangement. Caroline replied, "She'll complain for a day, then she'll get used to it." Zachary added a laughing emoji and wrote, "She owes you after everything you did for her." My father had not responded. Then I remembered a voice message Zachary had accidentally sent me 11 days earlier. At the time, I assumed he had been talking about a business investor. "Mom already wired the $150," he said. "Once they move into Charlotte's place, they won't need much. Dad thinks we're keeping most of the house money in savings, so don't mention the full amount yet." The message ended abruptly. 30 seconds later, he texted that it was intended for someone else and asked me to delete it. I told him I had. I had not. I listened to it 3 times in my new kitchen. My parents had sold their house. My mother had apparently transferred $150,000 of the proceeds to my brother. My father did not know the full amount. Their solution for housing was not a modest rental or a smaller home. Their solution was me. Caroline had given away their security because she believed she could take mine. That was when the situation stopped being an uncomfortable misunderstanding. They were not asking for temporary help after an emergency. They had created the emergency deliberately and assigned its cost to me without consent. My home was not their last option. It was the foundation of their plan. I could have confronted them immediately. The old Charlotte would have explained every sacrifice, offered compromises, and tried to make them understand why she deserved control over something she had purchased herself. But explanations had never changed my mother's behavior because confusion was not the problem. She understood my position. She simply believed she could overpower it. Instead, I opened my laptop and saved everything: the group messages, the recording, the deed, my closing documents, and the bank records showing that I had repaid the only substantial amount my parents had ever given me. Then I called the attorney who had handled my purchase. It was almost 9 at night, so I expected voicemail. She answered. I explained that relatives intended to arrive with movers the next morning and occupy my house against my wishes. She asked one question. Have they ever lived there, paid rent there, received mail there, or signed any agreement giving them access? I said no. Then put your refusal in writing tonight, she replied. Do not allow their belongings inside, even temporarily. I sent my mother, father, and brother the same message. I do not consent to anyone moving into my property, storing belongings on my property, entering without permission, or representing themselves as an owner or resident. Any arrival tomorrow will be treated as a day visit only, and movers will not be permitted to unload. My mother responded with a thumbs-up emoji. Zachary wrote, "Relax, you'll survive." My father remained silent. Their responses told me they had read the warning and intended to ignore it. So I stopped preparing an argument and started preparing consequences. At 9:22 that night, I called a 24-hour locksmith and changed every exterior lock, even though the keys I had received at closing were new. My mother had once taken a spare apartment key from my purse and copied it, for emergencies, so I did not underestimate her. I reset the garage code, changed the security password, and activated 2 cameras covering the driveway. Then, I emailed the moving company named in my mother's group chat message. I attached my deed, identification, and written notice that I did not authorize delivery or unloading. The dispatcher called within 15 minutes. She sounded relieved rather than annoyed. Movers encountered family disputes more often than I imagined, and the company did not want its crew trapped between competing instructions. She explained that the truck could arrive, but nothing would be unloaded without my direct authorization. If the customer refused an alternate destination, the belongings would be placed in secure storage, with waiting, transportation, and storage fees charged to the customer. That call removed the weapon my mother planned to use: momentum. She believed that once the beds, boxes, and furniture were inside, I would feel too guilty to force them out. Preventing the unloading meant I would never have to make that decision. Next, I contacted the local non-emergency police line. I did not exaggerate the threat. I documented that relatives had announced an intention to occupy my home after receiving written refusal. The dispatcher advised me to avoid physical confrontation and call if anyone attempted forced entry. She gave me an incident reference number. I printed it. Then I created the welcome display. I placed a folding table beside the front door and covered it with a white cloth. Above it, I taped a sign printed in large letters: "Welcome to Charlotte's Beach House. Day visitors must check in. No tenancy, residency, storage, or move-in permission has been granted." Below the sign, I placed 3 envelopes. The first was addressed to Caroline. Inside was a copy of my written refusal, a letter from my attorney confirming sole ownership, a list of nearby hotels and long-term rentals, and an estimated invoice from the moving company showing the charges that would apply if the truck entered storage. I also included a visitor agreement stating that entry, if allowed, would end at 6 that evening and would not create residency rights. At the bottom, I typed, "A relationship does not transfer ownership." The second envelope was for my father. It contained the deed, my mortgage statement, and a handwritten letter. I told him I loved him and would help him locate a reasonable rental, but I would not provide housing while financial facts were being hidden from him. I included a transcript of Zachary's accidental message, but not the recording itself. I wanted my father to have a chance to ask the truth before hearing his own family discuss deceiving him. The third was for Zachary. It contained his "she owes you" message, proof that I had repaid the family loan, and one sentence: "The person who received the house money can provide the house." I photographed the display and sent it to my attorney. Then I corrected the family chat. Several relatives believe I invited Mom and Dad to live with me. I did not. My mother called, then texted, "Take that down before people see it." I replied, "They already saw your claim. They can see the correction." Relatives immediately began asking questions. My mother stopped responding. At 10:30, my father called. He asked whether we could discuss everything in the morning. I told him we could, but no one would enter with belongings. He said, "Your mother believes you're humiliating her." I looked at the message where she had told everyone I would complain and then surrender. "She announced a decision about my property publicly," I said. "Correcting it publicly is accuracy, not humiliation." He sighed. "Where exactly do you expect us to sleep? You had a house, you sold it, you received money from the sale. I did not create this situation. I will help you identify options, but I will not become the option chosen for me." Then I asked, "Did you know she transferred $150,000 to Zachary?" The silence changed. "She told me she loaned him $40,000, he said. "I think you should ask to see the account before tomorrow." The call ended soon afterward. At 11, my mother posted that I was reacting emotionally because leaving my job had made me unstable. She said they were only staying briefly while considering their next purchase. I responded with the screenshot where she called the upstairs room our suite, then muted the chat. There was one final step. She had invited relatives to arrive at noon with champagne for what she called the Fenwick's new beach chapter. She had created an audience because she expected my surrender to look like generosity. Canceling would let her tell everyone a private version afterward. Instead, I scheduled a video call for 12:30 and invited every adult she had included. The title was simple: Clarifying the Beach House Arrangement. At midnight, I packed my documents, laptop, and the original recording into a bag. I locked the house and drove to a cafe 2 blocks away. From there, I could watch the cameras and return when the movers confirmed nothing had been unloaded. At 6:03 a.m., my mother sent her first message. "We're already on the road. Make coffee." At 10:58, the moving company said the truck was 20 minutes away. At 11:34, my mother's car entered the driveway. At 11:36, she saw the sign. At 11:38, the first call came. By noon, there were 34. I watched the arrival through the security feed. My mother stepped out before the car had fully stopped. She wore white trousers, oversized sunglasses, and the expression she used when entering a place where she expected special treatment. My father remained behind the wheel. Zachary arrived less than a minute later, followed by the moving truck and 2 relatives carrying champagne. The entire scene had been arranged as a celebration. My mother had not merely expected me to accept her decision. She expected me to perform gratitude in front of witnesses. She walked toward the porch, noticed the table, and stopped. Zachary leaned around her to read the sign. One relative lowered the bottle. My mother tore open her envelope, scanned the first page, looked directly into the camera, and called me. I declined. She called again. I declined again. On the third call, she left a voicemail. "Charlotte, this is not funny. We have a truck full of furniture. Open the door immediately." The crew leader showed my father the paperwork while my mother tried the locked door. Then she removed a key from her purse. I had been right about the copied key. When it failed, she slammed her palm against the door and called again. Messages followed. "Your key doesn't work. Tell the movers which room is ours. Your father is getting upset. You are embarrassing this family. You cannot keep parents out of a family home." That last message revealed the belief beneath everything else. She did not think of the property as my home. It was a family asset because I was the family member who had acquired it. The movers refused to unload. My mother claimed authority as the owner's mother. The crew leader said he had reviewed the deed and needed my approval. She called me unstable. He merely warned that paid waiting time would begin in 12 minutes. My father opened his envelope. He read the letter, then the transcript. His face changed. He turned to Zachary and asked something I could not hear. Zachary looked toward my mother instead of answering. At 11:49, she left another voicemail. "If you do not answer, I will have a locksmith open this door." I confirmed with the dispatcher that nothing would be unloaded, then called my attorney. She advised me to return with another person present, remain outside, and avoid giving anyone temporary access. The ownership question was not open for debate. At noon, I walked back with 34 missed calls, 17 messages, and 6 voicemails. I did not feel triumphant. I felt steady. For years, her anger had made me feel guilty. That morning, it sounded like a locked door remaining closed. Everyone saw me before I reached the driveway. She marched toward me. "What have you done?" "I prevented an unauthorized move-in." "Unauthorized?" She pointed at the truck. "Those are our belongings. We sold our house." "I know." "And where do you expect us to go?" "I included several options in your envelope. We are not going to a hotel while you sit in a 3-bedroom house. That was your decision, not mine." My father stepped between us holding the transcript. "Charlotte, where did this come from?" "Zachary sent me the recording 11 days ago." My brother's face lost color. "That was private." "It was about using my home to hide the consequences of a financial decision." My mother snapped. "This has nothing to do with the house." "It has everything to do with it. You transferred money to him because you assumed I would provide free housing." My father turned toward her. "Did you give him $150,000? She lowered her voice. "This is not the place." "It became the place when you brought a moving truck here." One relative set the champagne on a car. Guests invited to witness her victory were now witnessing the truth. Zachary said the money had been invested, not given away. His restaurant expansion would produce returns within 6 months. I asked whether he had signed a loan agreement. He said family did not need contracts. I asked whether he had offered my parents a room in his condominium. He said his building did not allow long-term guests. Then use part of the $150,000 to rent them an apartment, I said. He laughed once, but no one joined him. My mother announced that she and my father had sacrificed for me for 28 years, and that my house existed because they had created the stability that allowed me to succeed. I removed the repayment records from my bag and handed them to my father. The only substantial money they gave me after high school was $12,800. I repaid it in full. I paid my own tuition, rent, and down payment. That is not the point, she said. It is, because you have been telling people I owe you this house. I never said that. I showed her the screenshot. She'll complain for a day, then she'll get used to it. My father studied the records. The moving supervisor approached and informed my mother that paid waiting time had begun. She told him to unload everything on the lawn. He refused. She ordered my father to tell him they had permission. My father looked at me, then at the truck. We don't, he said. It was the first time I could remember him contradicting her while she was still speaking. She turned on him. Douglas, do not make this worse. You told me Charlotte invited us. I said she would understand. You told me Zachary received $40,000. He needed more than expected. How much is left from the sale? She did not answer. At 12:25, the movers offered 3 options: provide another delivery address, return the items if the former buyer allowed it, or place them in storage. The old house had already closed. Zachary refused delivery to his condominium. My mother demanded that I approve the garage. I said no. My father selected storage. The initial charge was $2,800, followed by weekly fees. He signed the authorization. As the truck pulled away, my mother whispered, "You are going to regret humiliating me." I looked at the witnesses, the cameras, and the unopened house. I replied, "You regret that I stopped protecting the version of this story that made you look generous." At 12:30, my phone reminded me that the video meeting had begun. My mother saw the notification and asked what I had scheduled. I told her relatives had received conflicting explanations, so everyone would hear the same facts. She accused me of conducting a trial. I said she was free not to participate, but I would still correct claims involving my property. I remained outside and joined from my laptop. 11 relatives appeared, including Caroline's sister and my father's older brother. I shared my screen and presented the timeline, the deed, the closing date, my mother's announcement, my written refusal, her thumbs-up response, Zachary's instruction to relax, and the messages where she said I would eventually get used to the arrangement. My mother interrupted. She said I was presenting facts without context and had become obsessed with control after leaving my job. She described allowing them to stay as the reasonable family response. Then she claimed I had known for months that they planned to sell. I asked her to show one message or call where I had agreed. She said families should not need written contracts. I asked whether she had any conversation at all. She responded by calling my tone cruel. This was her pattern. When facts became uncomfortable, she replaced the subject with my behavior. She did not explain why she lied about the invitation. She described the correction as humiliation. She did not explain why she ignored my refusal. She described my refusal as cold. My father's brother interrupted. "Caroline, did Charlotte invite you?" She knew we were considering options. That is not an answer. I answered for myself. No, I learned last night that they intended to arrive today. I told them no in writing. They came anyway. A cousin asked why my parents had sold before arranging housing. My mother said the market had created an opportunity. My father corrected her. They had accepted a fast cash offer because she told him they were buying a smaller home with the remaining equity. "How much remains?" his brother asked. My father looked at Caroline. Zachary stepped closer. "The money is not gone. It is tied up in my expansion. It is an investment." I asked whether there was a signed agreement specifying repayment, interest, or ownership. "No," he said. "Mom trusts me." My father's voice stayed quiet. "I did not authorize $150,000. My mother finally admitted the total was $162,000, including $12,000 paid directly to a contractor. The net proceeds from the sale had been just under $204,000. After debts and moving expenses, less than $22,000 remained. The call went silent. Then Caroline claimed Zachary's business could become a family legacy. She said I was jealous because she had invested in him instead of giving me a large gift. I did not defend myself. I asked my brother one question. "When Mom told you they would live with me, did you believe I had agreed?" He hesitated. "I assumed she handled it." "Did you know Dad believed you received only $40,000? That message was taken out of context." "What was the context?" He looked at my mother. I played the recording. His voice came through every phone. "Mom already wired the $150. Once they move into Charlotte's place, they won't need much. Dad thinks we're keeping most of the house money in savings, so don't mention the full amount yet." My mother closed her eyes. Zachary accused me of violating his privacy. My father said, "You both planned this." Caroline insisted she intended to tell him later. She said she knew I would object, so she had avoided asking before the transfer. That admission ended the debate. My father removed his wedding ring and placed it in his pocket. He told everyone he needed time to understand the finances and would not be moving into my home. He apologized for arriving after reading my refusal. Then he told Zachary to provide every contract, invoice, and account statement by 5 the next afternoon. My mother told him not to overreact. "I sold my house because you said we were downsizing together," he replied. "You transferred most of the money while telling me it was safe. You arranged to occupy Charlotte's house without permission and used my name to pressure her. I am reacting to exactly what happened." He called his brother and asked to stay with him. His brother agreed. My mother looked around the driveway. "So, everyone is abandoning me now?" My father answered, "No. Everyone is refusing to absorb the result of choices you hid from them." The call ended after 43 minutes. Zachary remained long enough to accuse me of damaging his relationship with our father and endangering his business. I reminded him that I had not taken the money, hidden the amount, or created the recording. My mother was the last person in the driveway. She asked whether she could sleep upstairs for a few nights. She did not apologize or acknowledge the deception. She simply wanted a shorter version of the outcome she had planned. I told her no. "When does punishment become cruelty, Charlotte?" she asked. "When does refusing to participate stop being punishment and become self-respect?" She picked up her envelope and left. The consequences unfolded during the following weeks. The moving company charged $2,800 for the failed delivery and storage transfer, followed by weekly fees. My mother initially refused to pay, but the contract listed her as the customer, and the company had my written refusal. She paid using most of the money remaining in the joint account. My father opened a separate account and redirected his retirement income. He did not leave her without funds. He simply stopped allowing her sole control. He also discovered that she had listed him as a possible guarantor for Zachary's expansion. The guarantee was incomplete, but the attempt destroyed what remained of his trust. Zachary's records showed that the expansion was far less secure than he claimed. More than $90,000 had already been spent on a lease, construction, and equipment. Another portion was committed to permits and payroll. My father hired an accountant and gave him 2 options: sign a formal repayment agreement or face a civil claim over the hidden transfer. Zachary signed. He returned $25,000 immediately and agreed to monthly payments secured by business equipment. My mother faced the problem she had expected me to solve. She spent 6 nights in a hotel while rejecting cheaper rooms and 2 relatives' guest rooms. Eventually, she rented a furnished 1-bedroom condominium 25 minutes from the coast. The deposits, hotel, movers, and storage consumed almost all the liquid money left from the sale. She sold her luxury SUV to cover several months of rent. She told relatives I had abandoned her, but the family had seen the messages and heard the recording. One cousin replied publicly, "Charlotte did not sell your house, transfer your money, or sign Zachary's lease." My mother left the group chat that evening. The social consequences hurt her more than the money. She had always organized holidays, controlled invitations, and distributed information. After the confrontation, relatives began confirming details directly. They did not completely exclude her, but they stopped treating her version as fact. 3 weeks later, she contacted 2 of my consulting clients and suggested that personal stress might make me unreliable. One client forwarded the email to me. I sent it to my attorney, who issued a cease and desist letter demanding that Caroline stop contacting my clients, using my address, or presenting herself as authorized to discuss my professional capacity. My mother emailed, "You have made your point." I replied, "The point was made when I said no. Everything afterward has been your response to hearing it." A week later, she attempted to redirect mail to my beach house address. I corrected the request and added it to my attorney's file. A second legal notice finally stopped her. My father leased a modest apartment and separated their finances. He did not ask me to forgive him quickly. Instead, he apologized specifically. "I saw your message and still got in the car because I hoped you would give in and save me from confronting your mother." That was cowardly. It was the first apology from a parent that contained no excuse. 2 months after the move, Caroline appeared on the public walkway across from my house. I went outside only after confirming the cameras were recording. "You made me lose my home, my car, my reputation, and possibly my marriage," she said. "You sold your home. You transferred the money. You sold the car to cover the consequences. Relatives saw messages you wrote. Dad responded to information you hid. You exposed everything. I corrected what you said about me. You could have handled it privately. I told you no privately. You ignored it and invited an audience." She asked whether I would have helped if she had asked before selling. I thought about it. I might have offered a short stay or helped find a rental. But help offered freely was different from housing taken through pressure. "I might have helped," I said. "But you built the plan around my inability to refuse." She asked whether she could see inside the house. "No." Her expression hardened. "You used to be kinder. I used to be easier to overrule." She left without apologizing. 6 months later, the beach house finally looked like the place I had imagined. I turned the upstairs room my mother had claimed as her suite into my office. The second bedroom became a guest room for people I invited. The third became a reading room. Empty space no longer made me anxious. A room did not need to justify itself by being available to anyone who demanded it. My consulting business grew. My father remained separated and continued rebuilding his life. Zachary made his monthly repayments, usually at the last possible moment. His second restaurant opened late and on a smaller scale. He told me the family would never be the same. I replied that the family had already been built around unequal rules. I had simply stopped pretending those rules were love. My mother's first 2 apologies avoided responsibility. One said we had both done things we regretted. Another said she was sorry for assuming I would help, but added that a loving daughter would have opened the door. I did not respond. Almost a year later, she sent a different message. "I sold the house before securing another place because I believed I could pressure you into accepting us. I lied to your father about the money and lied to relatives when I said you invited us. I contacted your clients because I wanted consequences to frighten you into giving me access again. Those choices were wrong. You did not cause what happened afterward. Specific accountability did not erase the harm, but it mattered. I agreed to meet her for coffee in public. I did not invite her to the house, and she did not ask. We did not leave the cafe reconciled. Our relationship became limited, cautious, and dependent on behavior rather than titles. She never received a key. Some people might say the outcome was harsh. My mother lost the house she sold, much of the money she transferred, and the unquestioned authority she once held. My brother became responsible for repaying funds he expected to treat as a gift. My father confronted the price of remaining silent. None of those consequences came from threats or destruction. They came from removing the safety net they had secretly assigned to me. That was the welcome surprise they never forgot. It was not the sign, the attorney's letter, or the truck driving away. It was discovering that my no remained no after the calls, tears, accusations, witnesses, and guilt. I sometimes stand in the upstairs office and remember my mother telling me to find somewhere else if her move bothered me. She truly believed I would leave my own home rather than make her uncomfortable. The version of me she remembered might have done exactly that. That woman no longer lives here. I do. So tell me honestly, if your family sold their home, gave away most of the money, and arrived expecting to claim the house you had sacrificed years to purchase, would you have opened the door, or would you have given them the same welcome I did?
Thank you for watching this story and sharing this moment with us. Everything in this video is fictional and created only for entertainment, dramatic storytelling, and education. We hope it reminds you that when life exposes someone's true intentions, the lesson is not to blame yourself for trusting them, but to trust yourself enough to live.